Good evening. Tonight we're learning Maseches Yoma Daf Kaf Aleph. We're starting 3 lines from the bottom of Daf Chaf and the base. Let's get started. Mir Hashem will finish the parak tonight. A couple of interesting gemaras about the 10 nisim that took place in the Beis Hamikdash. We'll see that list is a little bit complicated, and we'll see some other nisim as well. But first, we have to finish up yesterday's sugya, which was we were discussing what does it mean in the Mishnah when it talks about a gever, kra gever. Does it mean that someone was actually calling out, or does it mean that it was a rooster? So that is a machlokas between the Amoraim, between Rav and Reb Shila. Let us see what the Gemara has to say here. Daf Chaf from the base, 3 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan. Shalosh kolos holchen misofa olam ad sofa. There are 3 sounds that traverse the entire world. The Eluheim, kol gal gal chama, as we learned yesterday. The sun, as it spins through the air, it actually creates this very powerful sound, which I don't know that we are able to hear, but it seems to be made. V'kol hamona shel Rome, the sounds of Rome, as we saw yesterday as well. V'kol neshama b'sha sheyotza min haguf. And at the time when the neshama, Rahman al-Islam, when the neshama leaves the body, it also makes a very, very loud sound. We'll see soon that this was removed. The Yeshomrim afleda, of course, childbirth. The Yeshomrim af ridaya. What is ridaya? So take a look at the top Rashi, Dibur Hamaschil on Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Dibur Hamaschil, the Yeshomrim af ridaya. Malach hamemuna al hashkos haaretz mimatar hashamayim mimal umin hatahom mitachas. So that's what the Gemara says, is that there was some type of malach, who was responsible for the waters, and these were many of the things that were very, very loud. It had a kolo misofa olam va'ad sofo. Says the Gemara, top line. This is so interesting. That's what the Gemara says, that really the sound was very loud when a person would be nifter, Rahman al-Islam, and then the Gemara says they davened for it and they had it removed. We've seen a few times in Shas. The Chachamim davened to undo something. They had davened for there to be no Yitzhahara for Nashim. The next morning there were no eggs. We have a well-known story of chickens, and that was a big problem. Yeah, because everybody, it was a very, it's traumatic enough. Yeah, seems to be. I mean, I would imagine. I didn't see anything in writing, but it seems that way. So all of this is really the end of a frame of what we learned yesterday, which was the Shita of Rav. And now we're going to see a Brisa which supports the Shita of Rav Shila. Now, Rav was of the opinion that when the Mishnah said Kara Gever, that it was talking about a person. But Rav Shila was of the opinion that it was not talking about a person, it was talking about an actual rooster. What's the raya? A much shorter raya. The raya we brought for Rav was half a page. So here the Gemara writes, 3rd line, Kaf Aleph from Adal, Tanya Kavasit Rav Shila, Yotze Ladera Kodem Kriyas HaGever, Dama Barosho. If a person goes out in the morning before Kriyas HaGever, then his blood is on his own head. Rav Yosha Omer Adshi Yeshana V'Yeshomer Adshi Yeshash. Once he makes sounds a few times. Oh, so what do we see from the Brisa? Kara Gever is talking about a rooster. It's not talking about a man who calls out a few times, it's talking about a rooster who calls out a few times. Here's mamish. That's exactly right. What kind of animal are we talking about? The tarnagol benoni. What is benoni talking about? It's talking about the physical size. Nope. Take a look at Rashi to the right. The tarnagol benoni she'enu memaher kriyaso velo me'acher, meaning it's a punctual bird, right? He does his crowing in the morning. He's very meduya. He knows what he's doing. He's a litva. He's a yeki. 6 lines down, Kaf Aleph, we're switching gears. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Shash Yisrael Olam the Regel Omzin Skufin Mishtachah Ben Revachim. Very eerie words. The Gemara says that when they went up for the Regel, they were standing very crowded together, but when they did Hishtach Havaya, they were Revachim. The Hishtach Havaya that was done in the times of the Mikdash was just a total face plant, flat on the ground, arms and legs spread out. And that was something that actually took place. Not only did they have that, but Nimshachin, they were so crowded. We know that there were 11 amos from behind the Kodesh HaKodashim until the outer wall of that area. And they even filled up that space, says the Gemara. My kamar, says the Gemara, I don't understand. If you're already telling me that Nisim are happening, so what's the whole big deal that you had to squeeze around behind the Kodesh HaKodashim? It's already B'tor Nace to just leave it be. Like, what's with all the colored details? It says the Gemara, even though even though it's true that they were jam-packed in that room, there was no physical space left. 1/3 of the way down, this was one of the 10 nisim that took place in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not, as the Mishnah writes in Maseches Avos. What were the 10 nisim that took place in the Beis Hamikdash? They are as follows. Asar nisim nasa b'beis hamikdash. Number one, lo yipila isha mereach basar hektish. A woman never miscarried due to the desirable smell of the reach basar hektish. Number two, velo hitzriach basar hektish me'olam. The meat never spoiled. Number three, velo nir zvuv b'beis hamitbachayim. Cutting up meat. I mean, that's like the best place ever for a bug. They didn't see any flies whatsoever. The Kohen never saw carry on Yom Kippur. There was never a psul we never had to go to the default Kohen because the Kohen Gadol became a Balkari. Below nimtza psul ve'omer uv'shtei alechem u'alechem apanim. Never in those grains did they find any psulim. Omdin svufin mishtachem and revachim, the nace that we just spoke about, that yes, they stood crowded. However, they were able to do ishtachavaya properly. Below hizik nachash ve'akrav Yerushalayim me'olam. There was never the sting of the bite of a snake or the sting of a scorpion in Yerushalayim. Now we're not in the Mikdash anymore. The Gemara is going to pick up on this. You said these were 10 things in the Mikdash. You're not talking about the Mikdash anymore. Now you're talking about the old city. You're talking about Har Nof. How far are you going? But it's certainly not the Mikdash. And nobody ever complained. Nobody ever complained that they didn't have a good place to sleep. Oh, you're going to stay in a youth hostel. When we went to Hebron for Shabbos back in the day with yeshiva, we slept on a hard cement floor in the basement of some yeshiva, and we were thrilled. We were the happiest kids in the world. Bunch of guys. We were in the best time. So that's an amazing thing that by nobody ever complained about a place to sleep. That's amazing. That says the Gemara. All right, there's a little bit of a problem with your list, and we're going to analyze this list over the next half an hour or so. Says the Gemara. You started out good, Pasach b'Mikdash. You said there were going to be 10 miracles about the Mikdash, but then you switched at the end, B'Siyim b'Yerushalayim, the last two, the Nachash and the Akrav and the no complaining. Those two have nothing to do with the Mikdash. I mean, I guess they're connected in concept, but it's certainly by no means directly about the Mikdash. The Gemara says you're right. Ikatarte achar niyasa b'Mikdash. There were actually two other ones. Titania. 2/3 of the way down, 3 lines before the wide lines. Tanya, the bright writes, "Me'olam no kabu kshamim eish shel atzei ma'aracha." That's one miracle. So we were down 2 because numbers 9 and 10 really didn't apply. Numbers 9 and 10 weren't about the mikdash; they were at Yerushalayim. So we add in this one that the rain never put out the atzei ma'aracha. And v'ashan ma'aracha afilu kol rucha shebolam bos menash bos bo ein mezizos samim mukomo. As we know, famously there was this perfect stack of smoke that came up from the mikdash, unwavered by the winds, just perfect. It's almost like if you were to think about if someone were to take a light and shine it up in a rainstorm, that would be what it looks like. It's a perfect smokestack. It doesn't go anywhere. Says the Gemara, okay, you've solved the problem. Really, you said there were 10, and then you were down 2 because of the 2 Yerushalayim ones. We added 2, and now we're at 10. First long line, says the Gemara, V'suleka, I can come up with more. No problem at all. V'atani Reb Shamaya mi Kalbano, from the city of Kalbano, Shivrei Kli Cheres nivlaim b'mekoman. If there was a kli cheres, then and it had to have been broken. I'll explain why in a moment. Then it was nivla b'mekomo. The ground swallowed it up. When I was a little kid on Star Trek, they had this scene. Whenever the floor had anything on it, the floor would absorb what was in it, and then it would, go under the floor into the garbage system. That was mamish the nace. Where do you think they got it from? That was the whole thing from Spock with the Kohen. It all came from Daf Gemara. So that's what's going on here. The Gemara says that it was nivlaim b'mekomo. What was going on with the kli cheres? So it's dvarim pshutim is that if you had kachim that absorb into kli cheres, you cannot be metaharis and you can't take kachim out of the mikdash. All you can do is break it to remove the tara status, but then you still can't take them out. So then they were absorbed into the ground. It was a nace. So that should be number 11 in theory, because he found an extra one. And second of the wide lines, these all as well. These chicken parts and the dishim mizbech hapnimi, all of these things, and from the menorah as well, they were also nivlaim b'mekom. That should be 12. Says the Gemara, you're right. We can add those in, but we have a way of consolidating what we initially saw on the list. Because if you were to look back up at the list, which is right in the middle of the page, we actually delineated that there was a psul, that we never saw a psul, but omer shtei alechem u'valechem apanim. So says the Gemara, 3 lines into the wide lines, psulei tlasa habu chashvinu bechad. The grains that never went bad, all of them are actually only one. It's not 3 separate ones. So when we talk about the fact in the Mishnah that there was no psul in the Omer Shtei Alechem and Lechem Apanim, it's not 3 miracles. It's really only 1. And now we have 2 spots left open. Great. So we have 2 left over. You just gave me 2 more about the things that got swallowed in the ground. Perfect, says the Gemara. Apik tray, v'ayil tray. So I could remove 2 by consolidating the psulim of the grains. And I can add the 2 that you just added in. Says the Gemara, yeah, you added the 3 together into 1 because they were all talking about the same thing. But the 2 that you added were also talking about the same thing. They were all talking about the ground swallowing it up. So it says the Gemara, you should also look at those 2 as 1, and then we're really missing 1. Says the Gemara, don't worry, we have other miracles that took place. Economy Acharisi, 6 lines from the bottom, down Rabbi Shub and Levi, Neis Gadol Haya Nase Belechem Apanim. There was a huge miracle that took place with Belechem Apanim. Siluko Kisiduro. Amazing how the Gemara consolidates its language. When you remove the lechem apanim, it was just like when you put it there, piping hot. Shene'amar, the pasuk reads, Lasum lechem chom b'yom hi lakicho. That when it was removed, it was just as hot as it was when you put it there. You know, you come to the table Friday night, Givaldik Geshmak hot chalas. A week later, they're the same Givaldik Geshmak hot chalas. It's the same exact thing. So that's a nes nigla. So you were afraid that you were down by 1 because the ones that were nifla really were the same. So you can't say that it's 9 and 10. It's really just 9. So we have an extra spot for a nes. This is it. So now we have number 10, and this is going to be it with the lechem apanim. Says Gemara, Suleka. There were more miracles that took place in the Mikdash. 5 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Levi. We have a Masorah, a tradition from our forefathers. Makom Aron. We know that the Aron was inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, but if you'd measure from one side of the Aron to the wall, it would be 10 amos, and if you'd measure to the other side of the wall, it would also be 10 amos. But the whole room was only 20 amos, so there was, we would have called it an optical illusion, but it was an ace. It doesn't make sense. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Noi, Amar Shmuel Kruvim b'Nesai, them too. None of it made any sense. The sides didn't work. They were side by side. Then each of the Kruvim's arms were 5. And that doesn't include the body. So 5 is 20 already. And what about the goof of the Kruvim? The math never made sense, but it was all done benes. So says the Gemara, don't worry, we're still really at 10. We're excluding that one from the count. Why? 3 lines from the bottom, because Nisi Devrai Kachashiv, Nisi Degavai Lo Kachashiv. I'm only including those which were publicly revealed miracles. Divroi from on the outside. But if they were Gavai, if they were only internal miracles, like the ones that took place in the Kodesh, nobody could see that. So therefore, those will not be counted. Says the Gemara, Hachi, if that's true, then we have a problem. Where was the lechem apanim? It was in the Kodesh. The shulchan was in the Kodesh. That wasn't levroi, that was legavoi. So says the Gemara, Hachi, lechem apanim nami, nisi legavaihu. That's not right. We should be down on the count for 1 at least, because lechem apanim shouldn't work. So says the Gemara, lechem apanim nisi devraihu. Really, at Taka was the case, and the lechem apanim was shown in public. How? When? How does this work out? Says the Gemara, don't worry, I'll provide you with a Maramakom, Da'amar Reish Lakish, last line, what does it mean in the pasuk when it says, Ala Shulchan HaTahor, the Shulchan that's Tahor? Says the Gemara, Tahor Mechlad Hu Tameh. Is it possible that the Shulchan will ever become Tameh? After all, top of Chafalef from the base, Kliyetze Asui Lenachasu. It was made out of wood and made to rest on the ground. You can't say that this is, that's not possible. What does the pasuk mean that it was eligible for Tumah? No, it's not. It's made out of wood and it's made to be planted on the ground. So why did the pasuk say tahor? So because the pasuk said tahor, Ella says the Gemara, 3rd line, Malamed, what they did was shemagbian osola ole regalim. They would raise them up in a way, and people could look from the outside into the Kodesh to see, they could see them. So now, lechem apanim is now, it's not vroi anymore. It's not just inside, it's begavai, everyone can, other way. Now it's not only legavai, it's also levroi, that the outside people could actually see it. But omrim lahed, they'd hold up the lechem apanim, they'd pick up the shulchan, and they'd say to the people who are ola regalim, re'uchi basem lifnei amakom, shesiluko kesiduro. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves what you are doing for the Avodah and the Beis HaMikdash, because, as we can see from the showbreads, that when they are put in, they are hot, and when they are removed, they are equally hot. Shneimar, lasum lechem chom b'yom hilakcho. Good, numbers work out. But wait a minute, we have more mitzvos, we have more nisim. And how can you say that it only limits here? V'hamara Rav Oshia b'shah shebana shlomo Beis HaMikdash natabo kol minei negadim shel zahav. What does that mean? He planted things that were made out of gold? Gold doesn't grow. We wish it would grow. And they would also have peros that were gold as well. And according to some, this is where Kohanim got their money from. This is where they got their parnassa from, these gold trees, that gold doesn't grow on trees, right? So the Gemara says, yes, it did. Noshrin. When the wind would blow by them, it would, like outside in an orchard by an apple, when the wind would blow hard enough, it would knock off an apple from the tree. But once there was a violation of people coming into the Heichal by all the Frobanos Beis HaMikdash, unfortunately, so then Yibesh had dried out, that these fruits became destroyed. But in the future, Hashem will make these grow yet again. So these things will be parach, tifrach, in the future, these will grow yet again, derech nes. So says the Gemara, why didn't you include that? That's a beautiful thing to include. We should have 11 and not 10. Answers the Gemara. Things that are kavua, things that are fixed, are not kachashus. Says the Gemara, and with this part of the sugya ends, at least in some way. There's another reason why the aron and kruvim should be excluded, because they're kviye. So just validating what we said previously, that they're excluded, though we had said they were excluded for other reasons, but the Gemara validates with that. Now, for the rest of the page, till the end of the paragraph, we're going to be analyzing different types of smoke and different types of fire, because the Gemara has a problem with what we just said. 1/3 of the way down, two lines into the middle with lines. Amar Mar. The Ashan HaMa'aracha, we said that the Ashan HaMa'aracha didn't move. Was there any smoke in the Ma'aracha? We would have instantly assumed yes. The problem is, V'hatanya, the Brisa writes, there were 5 things that were stated about the fire of the Ma'aracha. Revutza ke'ari, Revutza, the coal that was used there was in the shape of a lion, came down from Shamayim, derech nes. Ubara kechama, it was very clear, like the sun was very clear. The fire was a beautiful fire. The yeshba mamish, normally, if you take your hand and you move it very quickly through fire, you might feel heat, but you certainly don't feel mamashus. There's nothing physically there that you can touch. However, here the Gemara says, v'yeshba mamish, the fire had a physical component to it. The ocheles lachin kivation. And this particular fire, the ma'aracha, could consume liquids and could consume dry things. We're not talking about flammable liquids, even water, which is the opposite of nature. Says the Gemara, and the last one of the 5, ve'ino ma'ale ashan. So you said in our Mishnah, in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos that we quoted, you said that the Ashan went up and none of the winds of the world could move them. What do we see over here? Ve'enu ma'ale Ashan. The Brisa writes this. It says the Gemara, Ki karmin b'dehedyon. We're talking about fire that was brought by people. In addition to the Ma'aracha that the Mikdash had, fire also had to be brought by others, and that's the smoke that we're talking about, the smoke that people would bring from the wood that they would bring and put on. So that's the type of smoke that we're talking about. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, "V'nasnu b'nei Aaron ha'kohen eish al mizbeach." They put it on the mizbeach. Alpha bisha eish yored this min hashamayim mitzvah lahavi min ha'edyot. Even though it's true that fire does come from heaven, but still you need to bring your own. You need to bring your own eish, your own fire for the Beis HaMikdash. Revutza ki'ari. You said in this brisa that we just quoted that it's Revutza Ki'ari, that it had the shape of a lion. I saw that it looked like a dog and not like a lion. Such subtleties and difference in the shapes of coal. And through the Gemara, Lokasha kan b'mikdash rishon kan b'mikdash sheni. Says the Gemara, that can't be either. Ubemikdash sheni mi havai. We know that everyone who saw Beis HaMikdash Rishon and Beis HaMikdash Sheni was a depressing day for them. They knew that Beis HaMikdash Rishon was incredible, and here are a lot of the differences. And this raises a huge number of halachic questions about what is the minimum requirement for a Beis HaMikdash to function. What furniture do you need in the Beis HaMikdash? Ubemikdash Sheni mi havai. You want to say that there was a ma'aracha there? Hold on one second. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Inya my dichsiv. What does the pasuk say when it says v'arza bo v'ikaveda without a hay? V'karinan v'ikaveda. We read it like it's a hay. But really, if you were to look at the word, we would have said ve'achabed or ve'achabed, something like that. What's with the letter hey? Ma'ishna de mechusar hey. What's with the missing hey? I know we read it that way, but why did you leave out the hey? Because there were 5 things missing in the second Beis HaMikdash. Elu chamisha derem shayu bein mikdash rishon lemikdash sheni ve'elu hen. These are the 5 differences. We were missing the aron, the kapores. We were missing the kapores, the kruvim, eish, the shechina, the ruach hakodesh, and the tumim. We were missing quite a bit. So Amrei, you're absolutely right. There were some things missing. There still was some, but it wasn't a significant, helpful amount. So that didn't work out. Tanu Rabbanan, the Gemara now analyzes 6 types of fires. Tanu Rabbanan, we're about 2/3 of the way down, halfway through the middle width line. Tanu Rabbanan, Sheish Ishos Hein. There are 6 types of fires. Yeshochelas ve'eno shose. There are those that consume solids but not liquids. V'yesh shose ve'eno ochelas. There are those that consume liquids but not solids. We're going to analyze all of these. V'yesh ochelas v'shose. There are some that can consume both. V'yesh ochelas lachin ki'evation. There are those who can consume liquids just like dry. V'yesh eish docha eish. Some fires push away other fires. V'yesh eish ochelas eish. And some fires consume other fires. Let's go through all of them. Yesh eish ochelas ve'eno shose. What does it mean that there's a fire that's ochelas ve'eno shose? Hadidan, that's our case that we've been talking about. What about the case of shose ve'eno ochelas? That's talking about techolim. When people are sick, they get very thirsty when they're sick. Not literally a fire, just a homily of someone who is not feeling well. Hadidan, shose ve'eno ochelas, that's talking about a sick person. Ochelas v'shose, what does it mean that it eats and drinks? To Eliyahu. That's the story about Eliyahu. He performed a miracle against the Bnei Baal. V'samayim asher b'ta'ala lichecha. that he dumped water all over the mizbech and it still lit perfectly, derech neis, to show that that the Jews had it right. Ochelas lachen kiyaveshin, what does it mean that it ate moist like it ate dry? That was the ma'aracha. The ma'aracha was able to consume both. Yesh eish docha eish de Gabriel. That's talking about the Malach Gabriel, who was able to push away fire. This is a story that we saw about Chagai, Zechar, and Malachi. That he went in to save them. He stood in the middle and he was docha eish. He pushed the fire away. So that was that's Gabriel. Obviously, that's talking about the Shekhinah. That's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Damamar Hoshi. That's Bo b'nei V'sarfon. A Kodesh Baruch Hu could have put his Kaviyachol, could have put his finger in a particular place and it would have consumed everything. Asks the Gemara, we learned earlier that that the wind could not move the smoke of the Ma'aracha. But says the Gemara, hold on one second. Everyone would look up to the heavens. Everyone would look at the smokestack and they would say the following. If the Ma'aracha, if seemingly the wind, if the Ma'aracha would push it north toward the top side of the temple, when we look at one of our 3D pictures, so that if it goes north, then the aniyim smechim v'balabatim atzevin. The poor people were thrilled and the crop owners were very unhappy. Why such happiness and sadness? There was the Gishmei Shana were good, but it would ruin a lot of their fruits. If you're a poor person, great. You get to pick fruit off the side of the road. But if you have a lot of food, it was going to ruin a lot of the food. It's too much water. Not the Klape Darom. If they were looking up at the smokestack, at the Ashan, at the Ma'aracha, and it was leaning southern, so then Aniyim Atzev Muvalabatim Smechem, then the reverse. The poor people were very sad, and the crop owners were thrilled. Small amount of rain, and they wouldn't lose everything that they had in their storage houses. What about Nata Klape Mizrach HaKol Smechem? If the Ma'aracha was to point in the direction of the east, everyone was happy. That was towards the entrance of the Mikdash on the eastern side. Klape Ma'arav, if it was to the west, if it would lean toward the Kodesh, then Kolat Sevin. So says the Gemara, that's a problem. Because you said that none of the winds of the world could move the Ashan Ma'aracha. This Bryce says it can move in all four directions. So that doesn't work. Says the Gemara, the Azil V'asi Kedikli Ve'avdure lo have a mivdar. So no, it could move, but the smoke wouldn't like spread out like smoke normally spreads out. It stayed, I'm making this up, but let's assume that it was a perfect cylinder of smoke. The cylinder could move, but the smoke broke the rules of gravity and every other rule. I don't know what all the rules are, but it's not supposed to stay like that. Smoke immediately disperses. Right, when you have a gas in an open space, it instantly disperses to the widest possible space that it can. So that's what the Gemara says over here. Yeah, you're right. The Brisa says that it was leaning that way because the miracle wasn't that it didn't move at all. It's that when it moved, the smoke stayed within its cylindrical path. Says the Gemara, Amar Mar, 5 lines from the bottom and almost at the end of the parak. Kape Mizrach HaKol Smechin. If one were to, if we said that if it were to lean to the east, then hakol tzmechen, klape marav hakol atzevin. But hold on one second. Reminu mizrachis leolam yafe, ma'aravis leolam kashe. So to the east is great, to the west is bad. Ruach tzfonis. If it's to the north, yafe lechitin b'sha shevi u'shlish. It's good for wheat when it has already grown 1/3. V'kasha lezesim izman shehin chontin, and not good for zesim in a certain part of their development. Rach dromis kasha lechitin b'sha shevi u'shlish v'yafe lezesim izman shehin chontin. So different sheetas as to what this means. The Amar of Yosef v'tem Amar zutra b'simanach shulchan b'tzafonim nor b'daram. And they said the way to remember this is that they had a simon for it, that shulchan was in the north. What was on the shulchan? Bread. What's bread made out of? Grain. And menorah b'darom, and the menorah in the Kodesh was on the southern wall, and what's made out of? Olive oil, so oil. High marbadidei, high marbadidei, each one referencing the liquids or the grains relative to what they were happy about. Says the Gemara, Lo kasha alan v'halahu. It was different in Bavel versus in Eretz Yisrael. Hadran alach, shivas yamim yiratzon. We should come back to this daf. It's 7.5 years. Wishing you all.
Didn't we have an earlier daf about that? The smoke going up?
I don't think so.
Yeah, the families, they had their certain secrets. The smoke going straight up and not dispersing.
I don't recall. What daf? What Masechta?
And this, I've seen in this Masechta.
Could be, I don't know. Doesn't ring a bell.
Where the families, where they were,
okay?
What?
Let me know if you find it.
All right.
Both of you have a good night.